When the night came for the lands between, it was sudden, unexpected, and no one knew how to counter this great power. The land was in turmoil after the shattering. The demigods were vying for power against one another, their own machinations more important than anything else plaguing the people of the lands between. So it was that on a dark night, in the aftermath of a great battle, a warrior stood, bloodied and beaten, and made a connection to a force far greater than any other in the land. With this connection came the rain, and with the rain came the Night Lords, each one feeling the pull of this dark power. Heolstor, the Night Lord, was once nothing more than a knight, fighting in an unnamed battle against a great hero. When we come to face him, he is a literal avatar of the night, channeling its power through his very being, and wielding a moonlight sword infused with a strength that cannot be found in the lands between. This is the story of the Night Lord. Before diving into this week's video, I wanted to take a minute to introduce Squaretable Gaming's Patreon. Much like our memberships on YouTube, we're offering early access to our content, but at additional tiers, we've got new perks, like behind-the-scenes looks at our editing process, access to the scripts for all of our videos, and ad-free content. If you want to support the channel and enjoy our entire bestiary without any mid-roll ads, please consider signing up for the STG Patreon. With that said, let's get back to the topic at hand. We cannot know for sure when the night began, but it is confirmed to have been sometime after the shattering. The inciting incident was during a battle against a famous hero of the lands between, but it would seem that well before then, the cogs were put into motion for this outcome. The Cutting Gifted tribe somehow scried the future, and knew the night would one day come. However, in order to prevent this from coming to pass, they needed to cheat a god. How exactly they did this is not so easily determined, but ultimately, I believe the creation of their own round table is the blasphemous act that put them on the Golden Order's radar. In order to create a round table of their own that would call their ancestors to fight against and suppress the night, they needed to glimpse the sin of the Erd Tree, and this is why none of their tribe remained in the lands between, save for a young girl who was hidden in Limfeld after being sacrificed to preserve their secrets. In order to create their round table, the original members of the Cutting Gifted tribe sacrificed themselves, but not before sending their children out into the world with specific instructions as to where to lay down roots and extend the branches of their family tree. In doing so, they ensured the round table would someday call the ancestors of those they sent away back to fight the night. However, in a cruel twist of fate, it seems this very action, taken to preserve the future of the lands between, also doomed it, because one of their ancestors would be directly responsible for the power of the night finding its way into this world. The recluse was a witch of the woods, who perhaps unknowingly was a branch of the Cutting Gifted tribe. She studied and created dark magics, using her talents to make a living, creating curses that were meant to aid those that paid for them. One such curse was meant to calm angry winds, but would later be modified to harm the Guardian's flock. I bring this up because I think it illustrates that the recluse never specifically intended to cause harm with her magic, and that it was the will of others which would manipulate her spells and cause horrific outcomes. For an unknown reason, the witch wished to be a mother to a creature of darkness, and to that end, she enlisted the help of the Witch of the Wheel. Together, they completed their ritual, and the Gnawling was born, a creature that fed on shadows and was filled with an insatiable hunger. The recluse was terrified of what she had created, and left the Gnawling in the care of the Witch of the Woods. Unlike her sister, this witch saw horrible potential in the child, and fed it behind the recluse's back, allowing it to feast on shadows to its heart's content. The baby was directly connected to the outer god of night, its power flowing through it, and it cried out for its mother, wanting love, affection, understanding. But she fled, not knowing how to provide it with these things. And that is how the Gnawling would come to find Heolstor. Heolstor was a knight in an army of a lord that we will never know. He fought alongside his fellow knights in a war that took place sometime after the shattering of the Elden Ring. As the demigods fought for runes, so too did the nobles and their armies. It is said Heolstor fought against a great hero, and there are precious few of those in the lands between. Personally, I believe the most heroic figure, the one who loomed larger than any other, is likely to have been the one who felled Heolstor's army, Starscourge Radahn. There's no evidence to back this claim, save for the understanding that he was a hero, so this may be a stretch, but I believe it to be a possibility. Regardless of whose side they fought on, the Recluse and the Witch of the Wheel were present during this battle as well, and the Witch of the Wheel unleashed the gnawling on their enemy. It devoured the shadows of any and all who crossed its path, even baring its fangs at its maternal figures, killing one and chasing away the other. The child needed comfort, but his mother knew only fear. During this desperate time, scared and unsure what to do next, the gnawling was drawn to another, who also found himself in a pit of despair. A knight who had crawled out from below a sea of bodies. The country lay in ruin. The man who once was a knight had challenged the hero, but he too was no match. He fell, just another body in a great pile. But eventually he awoke, crawling out from underneath the others. Though he had failed to protect anything or anyone, he yet lived. And so he cursed the world. It was the dead of night, and from the sky poured down a great rain. The gnawling gave itself to Heolstor, and in taking its power, the power of the night, power tied to an outer god, Heolstor ascended, and brought with him the rain that would wash away this land. Heolstor himself is the source of the rain that burns away what remains of the lands between, and it was his darkness that drew in the other Night Lords. From beyond space and time, they each felt the presence of this outer god, and found their way to its dominion, taking a piece of its power for themselves. All except Gladius, who actually met Heolstor one-on-one. The wolf pup, born with its 3 heads, was feared by its peers and driven out of the pack. But its will to live was strong indeed. Upon a rain-swept night, it seized a man's sword with its great jaws, but he showed no fear. He did not seek to harm the wolf, but instead took it in his arms. It has remained at his side ever since, always carrying that very sword. Heolstor found this 3-headed pup and granted him a portion of his strength, so that it could walk this path alongside him. Perhaps he saw something of the gnawling in Gladius, scared and alone, shivering from the cold, but strong enough to stand on its own, taking up a sword to protect itself. This story is a sign that there's something more to Heolstor, that he did not lose himself completely to the night, that the man still exists, somewhere buried in all that darkness. In fact, when we face Heolstor, he doesn't start the battle at full strength. We first fight the Shape of Night, a shambling creature that becomes more deadly as we fight it. It wields multiple swords, and only attacks after he's been provoked. It's not until we complete the first phase of this fight that the darkness within Heolstor is truly released, and the arena we face him in becomes covered in night. Upon this second phase, one of his swords begins to glow with a dark blue light, and it becomes apparent that he's wielding a moonlight greatsword. Interestingly, this sword in the Elden Ring universe is supposed to be symbolic of a union between a consort and a Carian royal, as Radagon was given a greatsword by Rennala, and Ranni the Witch grants us a greatsword after we show our devotion by giving her a ring. This forces us to consider where this sword came from. It's possible that Heolstor was once a knight of Caria, and was engaged to a Carian princess. As we know, there were likely more of them in the past, due to Rennala's sibling, R'hllana, being introduced in Shadow of the Erdtree. But with no other lore given in-game, we can't know for sure. My theory is that this Moonlight Greatsword is meant to represent the union between Heolstor and the Gnawling, having formed after they came together, and Heolstor was filled with this otherworldly power. Going back to the first phase of this fight, I think it's indicative of the truth behind Heolstor, that while he is responsible for the rain that covers the land, he has no desire to fully unleash it upon the world. Heolstor's mere existence prevents the lands between from being completely swallowed up as he wanders the void, keeping this darkness locked inside of him. He's not a vengeful knight taking his despair out on the world. He's a cursed knight, carrying the burden of the primordial Night Lord's rune, until someone can take it from him, and untether this otherworldly presence from the lands between, so that it can leave once and for all. This would explain why he communicates with the recluse through the Iron Menial, and helps her find her way to her missing child, reuniting them and severing his bond with the gnawling, so that the knight can finally leave this place. There's a theory I've mentioned in a previous video about the arena in which we fight the Night Lords. It seems to be made of the same material as the bone-like stone granted to us by Heolstor and the gnawling through the Iron Menial. A disturbing stone with a distinct lifelessness. The bone of an outer god, with the power to expunge divine essence, but that can also be destroyed by the same essence. The choice was left to the witch, as per the wishes of the one who bestowed it. The theory posits that the arena we do battle in is the literal corpse of this outer god, or at least its corporeal form, as it cannot exist amongst the light of the Erd Tree, and we see what is likely a spectral eye in the sky above this place. The outer god is connected to the gnawling, and in turn, Heolstor. When the recluse and the Witch of the Wheel birthed the gnawling, they created a vessel for this outer god to come to the lands between, much like the old rot god, which inhabited a scorpion. However, unlike other gods, such as the god of rot and the Formless Mother, this outer god of night didn't want power in the lands between. It was bound to this land against its will. This god has its own great rune, or at least something that resembles a great rune of the Elden Ring, found within the body of Heolstor. This rune is the source of his power, and unlike others, there was never any attempt to add it to the Elden Ring, to usurp the power of the Elden Beast, because this power could never exist alongside Golden Light. It could only destroy it, or be destroyed by it. The two outer gods that have come into contact in Elden Ring Nightreign are diametrically opposed to each other, and cannot live in harmony. And as its vessel, Heolstor understands that. The reason the Erd Tree is gone, and the body of this outer god has been reduced to bone, is because the two cannot exist in the same space, tied to each other. Perhaps that is the reason Heolstor keeps himself hidden away, beyond time, and walks on the physical corpse of his own godly patron, to keep from destroying the land altogether. This is an attempt to preserve what is left of the lands between, which he once called home. The ideal ending of Nightreign shows how these forces really have no interest in coming together in a mutually destructive way. Should Heolstor be defeated, the gnawling can be reclaimed by the recluse, and his great rune can be used to set the dark outer god free. Heolstor was likely incapable of doing this himself, due to being bound to its power, and if we interpret his delivery of the bone shard to the recluse as benevolent, then he always wanted to be slain, to free himself and the land of the rain and this power. Upon releasing the bound outer god, it awakens, and looks upon the Erd Tree, standing proud again. Instead of trying to take this land for itself, the god simply looks at the tree, turns, and walks away. It never wanted the lands between. It was a prisoner here. Perhaps Heolstor was never a malicious being, bent on destroying the world for how it had wronged him. He was a knight through and through, who was burdened with the sorrow and power of the gnawling, and chose to exile himself to prevent whatever damage he could due to the presence of the outer god he was bound to. Like many powerful beings in the FromSoft universe, Heolstor's story is a tragedy, forced into his seat of power by circumstances outside his control. So the next time you defeat him, take a moment to consider that he wanted the same thing as the Nightfarers, an end to the cursed night, and you are the means by which he has achieved his goals. at least until we face an Everdark version of him. Thank you for entertaining my thoughts and theories when it comes to Heolstor, the Night Lord himself. Do you believe Heolstor gave the recluse the bone-like shard so that she could find her child and end the reign? Or was he trying to convince her to embrace an everlasting night? Is Heolstor a bitter knight or a tragic hero? If the Wilder takes Heolstor's place, what happens to the knight that was taken by this outer god? Let us know what you think in the comments. Watch that button light up as I say like this video, and if you think we've earned it, please subscribe and hit the bell so you never miss out on any of our lore dives. We look forward to seeing you again for more Elden lore.